Before the world could see, I already felt it and wrote it in the Jesus diary, my diary. The night had not yet broken, but something in the air already had. It wasn't the sound of soldiers or the rustle of torches cutting through the olive trees. It was the silence between two hearts that once walked side by side. That silence, the kind that comes before thunder, before betrayal, before a name is no longer said with love, was louder than anything around me. I knew he would come. I had always known. And yet, nothing could prepare me for the moment his eyes met mine, still full of something that felt like sorrow and shame wrapped in resolve. We had shared bread. We had shared laughter. We had prayed under the same stars. And now, we shared a prophecy too heavy to bear. As his footsteps neared, I could feel not just the ground tremble, but my own chest ache with the weight of the moment. This wasn't just the betrayal of a friend. It was the fracture of trust, the unraveling of a promise. And still, I didn't pull away. I stayed. Before Judas kissed me, he leaned in, and in a voice so low no one else could hear, he whispered something I will never forget. His words didn't scream guilt. They didn't echo hatred. They pleaded, and in them, I heard not the traitor the world would remember, but the man I had once called friend. I won't repeat what he said, not because I've forgotten, but because I've forgiven. If you've ever been hurt by someone close, if love once turned into silence, and you still carry the echo of that moment, leave your light. Not for me, but as a way of saying, I still believe in love, even when it breaks. The garden didn't feel like it had the night before. The same tree stood, but something sacred had shifted in the stillness. The wind moved through the branches with the gentleness of a whisper, but the leaves didn't sing. They listened. Even creation seemed to know what was coming. The ground beneath my feet felt softer, as if it too was preparing to carry pain. My hands trembled, not in fear of what men would do, but in awe of what love was about to endure. I could hear the others sleeping nearby. Peter's breath heavy, John curled close to the earth. They did not know, not fully, not yet, but I could feel approaching. Not death, not the cross, but something more intimate. The betrayal of a soul once held close. Torches flickered in the distance, not yet near, but close enough for me to taste the copper of inevitability. My heart didn't race, it remembered. It remembered the days Judas had laughed, the moments he had prayed, the times his hands helped feed the multitudes. And that's what made this harder. Not the soldiers, but the shadow of a friend now walking as a stranger. Every sound was louder in the quiet. The snapping of a branch beneath a sandal, the hush of whispered orders, the murmurs of the mob trying not to tremble. And through it all, my spirit remained still, but not numb. I felt everything. The heaviness of love that still believed, the ache of a goodbye that would not be spoken, the sting of loyalty lost, not because of hate, but because of something more complex. A heart divided, and that night before I saw his face, I already knew this betrayal would not come with a sword. It would come with a kiss. And that's why the garden no longer felt like a place of rest. It had become holy ground because pain was near, and I had chosen to meet it, not with defense, but with surrender. He was not hiding. That was what made the pain sharper. He walked toward me with the same steps I had seen so many times before, confident, measured, almost careful. But tonight, there was something different behind his eyes. They did not burn with hatred. They trembled with hesitation, with a sorrow that was trying to mask itself as resolve. He stepped out of the shadows with the soldiers behind him, but it was not their presence that pierced me. It was his. It was the weight of all the moments we had shared. Meals eaten side by side, prayers whispered under moonlight, laughter exchanged across campfires. He was not a stranger. He was one I had chosen, one I had loved. As he approached, there was a silence between us that thundered. It wasn't the silence of enemies. It was the silence of two hearts that once knew each other, now speaking in different languages. I looked at him, not to stop him, but to see if there was still something left. A flicker, a fracture, a question in his soul. And I saw it. He was already breaking, even before he got to me. Then he whispered, not to the soldiers, not to the priests, to me. And what he said, I cannot write here. Not because it was too painful, but because it was too human. Too full of everything unsaid. Of guilt wrapped in duty. Of regret trying to sound like courage. His whisper was not a curse. It was a confession. And I didn't respond with anger. I received it. I let it echo inside me. Because love listens, even when it's being betrayed. He came closer, slower than he needed to. And before his lips touched my cheek, our eyes met. He was hoping I'd stop him, hoping I'd say something to change the course. But I didn't. Not because I didn't love him, but because I did. And sometimes, love doesn't hold someone back from a fall. It waits for them on the other side of it. The kiss wasn't what broke me. It was that whisper, that soft moment when even betrayal tried to apologize. When even the one handing me over was hoping I'd still look at him the same. And I did. Because love never looks away, even when it's being crucified in silence. He came so close I could feel the breath he didn't want to exhale. His hand trembled as it touched my shoulder, not with rage, but with remembrance. And then the kiss. A gesture so small, yet it thundered through eternity. The world sees it as betrayal. History remembers it as the mark of treason. But in that moment, in the second when his lips met my cheek, what I felt wasn't only the weight of what he did, it was the heaviness of what he couldn't undo. I closed my eyes, not to escape the moment, but to feel it more deeply. And there, in the silence that followed, something inside me cracked open. Not in despair, but in compassion. Because in Judas, I saw not just the traitor the world would remember. I saw the child he once was. I saw the hunger in his soul for meaning, purpose, belonging. He wasn't born for this. He didn't begin with silver in his hands. He began with hope in his heart. But somewhere along the way, the weight of expectation crushed him. The pressure to force the kingdom into something it was never meant to be. And I knew his kiss was not a celebration of betrayal. It was a cry for help wrapped in action too late to reverse. I wanted to hold him, to tell him it didn't have to end this way. That even now, grace was still reaching for him. But I didn't. I let the moment stand. I let him walk back into the shadows he chose. Not because I didn't care, but because love does not imprison. It waits. So I stood still, with tears that didn't fall but lived behind my eyes, with love that didn't retreat but stayed rooted even in pain. And in that moment, I realized sometimes the greatest heartbreak is not being betrayed. It's knowing you still love them anyway. If you've ever been hurt by someone you trusted or been the one who failed someone who believed in you, this page of the Jesus Diary is for you. Subscribe now, not for a story, but for a journey. One that reminds us that even when love is pierced, it still chooses to remain. That night, under the weight of shadows and betrayal, I learned something no scroll ever taught. I learned that love isn't proven by what we receive, but by what we choose to keep giving, even when it's not returned. Judas didn't break me because he was my enemy. He broke me because he was my friend. And in that fracture, I saw something deeper than failure. I saw how easy it is to lose ourselves when the dream we had of God doesn't look like the God we're standing before. He called me Rabbi, not Lord. And that mattered, because it revealed that while he had walked with me, eaten with me, laughed beside me, something in him never fully surrendered. He followed me with his feet, but not with his heart. And yet, even then, I didn't turn away. Even then, I called him friend, not out of irony, but out of truth. Because love doesn't cancel when it's disappointed. Love stays. Love speaks gently even when it's hurting. Love lets the other go, but never lets go of the hope that they can return. And maybe that's what grace really is. Not a feeling, not a theology, but a choice to see someone for who they are becoming, even when they can't yet see it themselves. That night, I didn't just see Judas as the one who would betray me. I saw the man who had once laid down his life to follow me. I saw the boy who had dreamed of the Messiah. I saw the ache of a soul caught between fear and destiny. And I wept, not because of what he did, but because of what he lost when he forgot who he was. That's what this page in the Jesus Diary holds. Not bitterness, but revelation. That the deepest kind of love is the one that stays soft, even when it's been pierced. The kind that still whispers, "Friend," even as the kiss arrives. The kind that teaches us forgiveness is not weakness. It's the highest form of strength, because it sees the wound and still chooses to heal. And now, as I write this page, not with ink, but with ache, I return to that moment. Not the kiss, not the noise of swords drawn or sandals scattering through the garden, but the whisper, that final fragment of closeness before the silence fell forever between us. He said, "I thought you would change everything." And those words stayed with me, because they weren't just Judas words. They were humanity's echo, the cry of every soul who expected me to conquer through force, but couldn't understand that love conquers by surrender. He didn't betray me because he stopped believing I was the Messiah. He betrayed me because I wasn't the kind of Messiah he expected. And yet, even in that, I loved him, not for what he did, but for who he was beneath the confusion, for who he might have become if he had waited just one more night. Sometimes the greatest pain isn't being hurt by an enemy. It's being misunderstood by someone you gave everything to. But if love is only love when it's understood, then it was never love at all. True love is what remains when nothing makes sense, when the garden turns into betrayal, when the cup doesn't pass, when the kiss comes and you let it. So I walked forward, not away from the pain, but into it, because that was my mission, not to avoid the wound, but to embrace it, and in doing so, redeem every broken piece of us. Every failure, every misstep, every name spoken in pain, every promise shattered under pressure. And if today someone is reading this page with trembling hands, wondering if they too have gone too far, hear this. The garden may be dark, but grace still walks in it, still calls you friend, still waits, not for perfect faith, but for the whisper that dares to return. I didn't say anything else that night. I just let that moment turn into silence, and that silence turned into memory, and that memory into word. In my Jesus diary, if this moment reached something inside you, answer with your heart. What whisper still lives in your memory? What name do you still carry, hoping to one day be called home again? If this page of Jesus' diary whispered something to your soul, don't let it fade in silence. Maybe you felt the weight of a kiss that was meant to honor, but turned into hurt. Maybe you've carried questions no one ever answered, like Judas did. Or maybe you've been the one to whisper something you regret. If so, share this video, not to expose pain, but to let healing begin. Someone else might need this page as much as you did. And now, the video appearing on your screen, it's not random. It might carry the answer you didn't know your heart was searching for. Let this journey continue. Let grace keep writing.